Hey, good morning, good afternoon, good day. This is Eugene, and welcome back with another episode of Real Talk with Eugene Holden. And Real Talk is about providing a platform for discussions regarding and going towards the direction of healing the planet of whatever is up, and just talking about what's on the hearts of people who come on to Real Talk. And again, for the soul's purpose, SOUL''S, for the soul's purpose of guiding and directing us all to experience a life of ever expanding good. And today I have on my a good friend again, Reverend Dr. David Alexander. We are going to be continuing the discussion that we began a couple of weeks ago. Reverend Dr. David, how are you, my brother?
What up, Eugene? I'm well. Good to see you, sir. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Heck yeah, I know it's been a couple of weeks, and it was interesting. After that particular broadcast, there were quite a few people who were asking that we continue that particular conversation.
Yeah.
And at the end of our last talk, David, we were speaking about liberation theology. And just to back up a little bit, we were speaking about the three aspects of that. The number one was being one with we don't want to use the word oppressed, but the ones who are just going through stuff, and then to unite with them. And there was the third one that I'm going to have you go ahead and just start off and just begin this conversation, liberation theology, because we're talking about having a new thought on new thought, which is not really a new thought, but you know what I mean.
That's right. That's right. New thoughts on new thought, which is not new. So, in the traditional sense, in the scholarly, academic, and theological world, liberation theology would be defined, one, by identification with the oppressed, or with the downtrodden, or with the marginalized. That's what it emerges out of from the Catholic versions in Latin America to the African American versions here in the United States through James Cone, and then womanist theology, so on and so forth. We would identify that step as simply identification with the one, right? Because the whole point of identification with the oppressed is to eliminate the sense of hierarchy. So even though in New Thought, well, you're absolutely right in saying, well, we wouldn't use that verbiage, right? We wouldn't. But the point of that verbiage is to say, I identify with the person who is oppressed or marginalized by society's system, and in doing so, I am one with them. Right. So the whole point of the identification is to reduce hierarchy and create connection and unification. Well, our theology kind of leapfrogs that process and just starts out there, right? There is no other, there is no them, there's just the one. So that's the first step. The second is to connect, to say to that group of people that the state of oppression is not your lot. Right? It's not your destiny. It's not your fate. It's not your anything like that. It's not the divine design, right? And so there again, in New Thought, we would say, yeah, we know that poverty, illness, lack, limitation, those are not our natural states. And when we're thinking in those states, our theology and teaching says we have a way of thinking, meditating, affirming, and believing to liberate you from that and get you reacquainted with your natural state, which is a state of wholeness. So there's great alignment there. And then the third is to empower that audience with a faith journey that ultimately leads to liberation. And so that is characterized in different ways and forms, depending on what version we're talking of, the womanist, African American, Latin, etc. For us in New Thought, it would be simply that our consciousness is the path of liberation, that we that our thoughts create our reality, and
Right.
because we're co-creators with a power greater than us, and we can use it, then we can harness that energy to liberate ourselves from lack and limitation. And the distinction we were making last time is to separate or to distinguish rather between the philosophical aspect of our teaching, which is very individualistic, and the theological aspect of our teaching, which is very communal and collective. And so anybody could take everything that I was just saying and say, yeah, that's my personal philosophy. That's how I think about myself. I liberate myself from thoughts of lack and limitation. And everybody else should do the same, kind of a pull yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of, idea. I was just saying to someone recently that we should not be surprised. I think it was on my After the Sermon show, just the next week after our conversation. We should not be surprised by the attraction of political conservatives to our teaching,
Right.
because that whole pull yourself up by your bootstraps philosophy is very akin to the philosophical understanding of our teaching, the individualistic understanding of our teaching. And so there's a lot of common ground there. I don't think it's a complete representation of our teaching. I think when we leave out the communal, we are doing a disservice to the principle of oneness. And so I personally don't think conservatives can stay in our teaching and really say that they're fully embracing our teaching. I think they're taking what sounds good to them, what they like,
Right.
and leaving a big section out. But to each their own, I suppose.
Right.
Yeah, but
it's interesting, in listening to you speak about this, right? And again, having a new thought, which really isn't all that new. And you speaking about, being one with the downtrodden and those who may not be, they're just going through things. And it reminds me of, that was the life of Yeshua, right? Because he hung out with those folks teaching them that, wait a minute, this is not your natural state of being,
Right.
And so again, this not being a new thing, but now here we are in 2020, the latter half of 2020, going into the last quarter for pretty soon, where we get to continue, on this path of, okay, let me recognize what's going on here. And then let me become one with going on here. Yeah. And let me pull myself up by my own bootstraps, and then taking the next step to assist others in doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, just that not only Yeshua, but all the great teachers, right?
Right.
Jesus didn't separate himself and say, well, I really understand my own oneness with my Father, with my Creator. I really get that. I really get that I am a son of the Holy One. And if you could get that you are too, then you'd be better off. But you figure that out on your own, and I'm going to be over here just enjoying my oneness with my God. No, it was because of his oneness and through his understanding of that oneness, first with the divine, and also with each other, with community, with his fellow beings, that he connected, and he said, you can have this power too, right? You can have this understood. So when we understand oneness, it connects us to each other, right? It doesn't separate us. And that's the key to anything that identifies itself as liberation theology, which is why I think New Thought is a version of liberation theology. And so you see the same with Buddha, right? Buddha is, Gottman is born in a life of privilege and has everything provided for him as a prince. And something is unsettling about that. He wants to, reach over the wall and explore the world and see the suffering and say, what's going on with that?
Right.
get connected to it. And through that
Right.
connection, he finds a path of liberation. Moses, same thing. Moses is pulled from
Right.
the river and raised by other people, right? He's raised in privilege. But there's something inside of him that says, you belong to those folks over there. You belong to the bricklayers that you're seeing outside of your, gilded window. And something inside of him connects to that and draws him to that. So we see that theme, that motif, if you will, over and over again in spiritual literature. And all of it is symbol to us as practitioners, as people walking a path of faith that says your primary job is twofold. One, to understand your oneness with the divine, and two, to connect with each other in that oneness.
Right. Man, there's so much here. With the examples that you use, Yeshua, Moses, the Buddha, and one the common theme, and then there's David, and there's Eugene, and there's everybody else. But the common theme is that there's something within all of us that says there must be more. Right. Now, I say there's something within all of us. Now, all of us may not be awake to it yet, but there's something within all of us that says there must be more that I can do for the collective, right? Mm-hmm. So because, you and I are in this particular philosophy, and how much I love what I call the spiritual tool of affirmative prayer.
Yes.
And every time I do a workshop or a class about this, man, it just gets deeper and deeper. And so I've gotten to the point where when I teach this now, I say that it's more than just going through the steps, right? So let's recognize not only the divine in everything and in everyone, but let's recognize where shit's going on, where stuff is just not in alignment with what we feel from inside. Let's recognize that, and let's go beyond that and recognize the good beyond that. But then also in that second step, to become one with that. Now, for me, when I become one with that person who appears to be less than, then that's who I need to go talk to, or that's who I need to reach out to. And so for me, I find that that's where we are now. We're in this global reconfiguring of humanity.
Yes. Yes. And the question becomes, I was having a conversation on my show after the sermon last night with Tracy Brown. And the question is, at what point do we collectively kind of hit a rock bottom? At what point do we say, oh yeah, I get it. I get the message that's delivered to us over and over and over again, with every news cycle, with every election, with every thing that's going on. The message is the same. The message is you have got to, and the message is consistent. It goes through those stories, ancient stories we were talking about. It goes all the way back through the Old Testament. The message is consistent over and over and over again. It's like going to a brand new movie and watching it and thinking to yourself, well, I've seen this movie before, right? I know where this is going, right? I've seen this plot. Right. And even in the movie industry, they talk about the universal plot, right? The universal story. There's the beginning, the middle, and the end, and it's the hero's journey, and pretty much everything is a remake of that same thing, right? And so we have that going on here too. That the story is the same. The story is your job is to reconnect with each other and to rebuild the covenant that says you belong to each other.
Right.
That message that the divine is giving over and over and over again. And the question is, what is it going to take for us to really wake up to that? And if we take the conversation a bit further and bring it down to the practical, what will it take for that? Because Yeshua was trying to get that message through to a power structure, to an empire.
Right.
And so we can get very real about that, right? We have a power structure and an empire now, called white supremacy running amok in our current reality. And it's not just a rhetorical question of what will it take, we can actually answer, right? What will it take? It will take people like me, people who look like me, to divest themselves of the power that this system has afforded us. And that's an interesting thing, right? Because we talk about how consciousness works, power doesn't like to surrender itself, without a fight, without a struggle. It doesn't just wake up one day and go, oh, I think I'll just lay all that down and give up all that power and authority. It doesn't work that way typically. So the question becomes, at what point do we become willing to sacrifice and to give up some sense of identity, some sense of power and authority, so that others around us may have more. And that becomes a narrative in the collective that, people on the other side of the equation here get very scared of. They say, oh, you're talking about socialism. Oh, you're talking about, well, in a lot of ways, Jesus was a socialist. Right? He was talking about, in my consciousness, the tide raises all boats, right? It's not just the chosen. It's not just the few. It's all boats rise with the tide. So that's the message over and over again.
Yeah, right. So let me ask you a question, David. You mentioned something, about this, the liberation theology, that New Thought really is so immersed in. It really is. And one of the words that you used was empower, right? So let me ask you a question. So this is kind of a twofold. How do you empower folks? And then the other question is, from your point of view, from your purview, how does the organization called Centers for Spiritual Living work to empower? Great question.
Great question. It's a great question. Indeed. Well, I think the answers are similar. They're one and the same, because it's through our main vehicle, which is spiritual education, right? My desire as a minister and our desire as an organization is to empower people with the tools for personal liberation, right? We say the tools for personal and global transformation. So what does that mean? It means you come in and you learn that you are a whole, perfect, and complete child of God, always have been, always will be. And to the degree that you understand that and learn how to articulate it, affirm it, and shape it with your words, thoughts, and attitudes, then you magnify and increase that experience in your own life. And then, the whole point of free people is to free others, right? If we're talking about liberation. So if I have any sense of freedom in my own life, any sense of I really understand this, I know what's going on, I equate it to the 12th step in AA program, right? The 12th step is about giving it away to somebody else. It's about helping somebody else secure their sobriety. So, which I think is so powerful, because it says you're not really complete with the journey of your sobriety until you help somebody else get free, right? And I think the same is true when we talk about spiritual liberation. You're not really complete. And this ties it back to this notion of conservative thinkers in our midst who want to just stay in the personal philosophy side of it. It's like, that's all well and good, but you're not, please understand, you're not complete with your journey of liberation until you help somebody else get free, until you're connected with community. And so I think that's, the way I say it in other places is, the moment we accept our oneness with the divine power, we accept that we are the vehicles through which God's wholeness reaches the earth, is the same moment that we become responsible for any place in the world of effects where wholeness is not revealing itself. Right?
Yeah.
You can't accept your wholeness in isolation.
Whew. Say that one again.
Right? You can't accept your wholeness in isolation. The moment you accept that God is who you are, that the I am presence is in you, and that you are one with that divine power. As Holmes would open his radio broadcast, there's a power in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it. The moment you accept that, you're accepting that you are a vehicle through which God's wholeness reaches the earth. The moment you do that is the same moment that you become responsible for revealing wholeness, helping to reveal wholeness anywhere in the world where wholeness is not currently the experience.
Now, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here.
Let's do it.
And like, well, wait a minute. I don't like that thing called God.
You don't like that?
How do I do this? Or I don't believe in this thing called God. How do I do this?
Well, it's this. So we can answer it in a non-God form if we want to do that. Right. That's fine. It's you're not an island, right? So what do you want? You want freedom. You want quality education for your children. You want clean water. You want whatever it is that you want. You want to live your life as a free and emancipated soul to do as you wish. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? Well, all of those things are dependent upon a community around you that is also liberated and is also free and is connected to that. So you're still responsible. You're still responsible for the world in which you live. And today, if I say, well, I'm just going to go do what I want to do today, and I'm gonna go get on a bus, and I'm gonna go to the airport, I'm gonna get on a plane, and I'm just gonna go wherever my money is gonna take me and just do whatever I want. All right, well, my freedom, my quote unquote freedom to do that is tied up in the bus driver showing up on time and the pilot showing up on time and the stewardess coming to work and all the other things that are connected. So this sense of individualism, which I think has kind of run amok in our country right now. It is, I saw my friend, Dr. Darnice Martin say, she called it pathological individualism, right? There is a healthy sense of individualism that we all have, that we must have, but then there's this pathological individualism that says, my rugged individualism over everything else. And at the sacrifice of a collective good. And that isn't serving anybody. And it just doesn't work. So that's how I would say that.
It's just not sustainable. It's just not. It's just not. Going back to, the names that we give this power, right? And when I have people in class who say that, but I don't believe in this, or I don't like the word God, and I call it, I love what Dr. Holmes says, right? Call it a potato. It doesn't matter. What matters is that we recognize that there is this something that we are a part of, and then being a part of that, I get to share how it shows up through me with everyone else. To empower everyone else, to empower everyone else, to empower everyone else.
Absolutely. When you look at, like, one of the great liberation stories is Moses and the Israelites from Pharaoh, right? And there's a couple significant things there. There is his call, right? So he first identifies with the other, right? Because he's growing up in a system of privilege. And as far as he knows what he's been told, even though genetically he's one with the Israelites, he thinks he belongs to Pharaoh and to that family, because that's what he's been raised in. So first, even though that's his identification, something inside of him identifies with the other. He follows that, and then he is led on a journey and led into this mountain experience with God. It says, go and tell Pharaoh, let my people go. And we're covering a lot of Bible here in a very 30 seconds, but hopefully everybody can track here. And he has to presence his wholeness, right? So identification with the other is key, and then presencing your wholeness. Who should I say sent me?
Right. I love this part. Keep
Tell
going.
him I am sent you, right? Tell
I
him I am
am.
sent you. Tell him the I am that I am that I am, that the wholeness within you, the allness within you, the that which cannot be subjugated, oppressed, downtrodden, that which cannot be violated, the wholeness that is within you, the divinity. When you presence your wholeness in front of your oppressor, then in that moment you are free, right?
Right.
And in that moment, Pharaoh has no choice, right? And of course, Pharaoh doesn't listen, and then he's therefore, has all the plagues and the things that are thrusted upon him. But that's not the end of the story. So then the Israelites are free, and they're free from something. They're free from the condition of oppression. But they then go on a journey in the wilderness to Mount Sinai. And they go to a place, right? To the place of experiencing God, where God is speaking. And in the wilderness would be, metaphorically in the Bible, really means a place that has not been co-opted, right?
Right.
An open space that is not owned or co-opted by anybody. It doesn't belong to any religion, doesn't belong to any principality or government or anything else. So that place in our mind, that place in our heart, that place in our collective being, that is free and open. And in that place, we hear the voice of God. And so there's two parts to liberation, right? There's free from a condition, but then there's liberation to something. They're taking on a journey to somewhere. So yes, you are to be liberated from conditions of oppression, but you're also to be liberated to something, to a purpose. And so the Israelites are brought to a mountain for a purpose, to receive a message and then fulfill their covenant with the divine. And what's interesting is that they don't want to speak directly to God. It's too frightening to them. And so they make Moses the mediator. And we could, there's a whole sermon in that just right there. But but we'll leave it there, right? There's free from something, freedom to something. We're at the point where it's time for us to answer our call and say, what have we been freed to? And we've been freed to the process of creating a better world, right?
Right. Bringing it full circle, which we really haven't left that circle whatsoever, is we are being called to.
Yeah.
We are being called, and it's an interesting way for me to look at this, right? Because we are in these times where stuff is just going on. Stuff is going on. When the president got elected, 3-4 years ago, and people were in an uproar, and of course there are reasons, and of course there are people who love the man, and all of that is good. But what I peeped was all of the stuff that was stirred up, the racism and white supremacy, the just the stupid stuff that came up. But it came up for us to look at it, so that we could, whatever it is that we need to do individually and collectively, and then now, how do we liberate ourselves and the collective to move on? Because now that this is up there, we can see it. It's time to move from this to something better.
Right. That's it. Because we're at that point in the story where it's not enough to simply stand in your own liberation. It's not enough to say, well, I've been freed from the Pharaoh. No, yes, but you've been freed to something. And that's to that collective, right? Because what do they receive at Mount Sinai? They receive the 10 Commandments, which is a new covenant, right? It's a wedding ceremony, really. This is how I want you to live. And it's not about those particular commandments necessarily, because that's about historical context of those people in that time. But it's about, you need to build a new society. And this is how you're going to do it. You're going to love and respect each other. You're going to, you're not going to have other gods. You're going to keep first things first. You're going to, we could go into all the metaphysics of all of those elements of the covenant. But it is about creating a collective society. The fact that you've been liberated is not enough. And that to me is the primary message I want, and I try to deliver, particularly to white people in New Thought audiences, which is, yay, I'm glad you love New Thought. I'm glad you've taken classes. I'm glad you have some sense of personal freedom and personal responsibility for your spiritual journey. Your personal freedom is not enough.
Now what?
Your brothers and sisters need you, right?
Right.
Literally, the world is on fire.
The world is on fire. Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. There's a pandemic of so much stuff that's going on. Yeah. Yeah. Literally. Man.
We as a movement, if we step into that really boldly, collective action, I know there are people kind of push against us and they want to stay comfortable in the individual realm. And there will always be, a variation of people's preferences within our communities. That's true for every kind of denomination or organization. But I think if we can say, this is where we're going to this collective work of building a world that works for everyone. I think it'll be the most empowering and transformative thing that we can do. And I think if we stall out and stop shy of that, then I don't think it bodes well for the future of our movement. I'll just say it that way.
Right. But here's the thing. I believe that in terms of the movement, there are more than enough people who are ready to take it from here to there, because, as we said earlier, there's something within us that says there's more. There's that spirit within us that says, oh no, there's more work to do. And you've said yes to it, dag nabbit.
That's right. That's why you're here.
That's why you're here. Period.
Yeah.
Man, it's how time flies, my dear brother.
There it is. We did it again. Last time I have to admit my faux pas. I had no idea it was just a 30-minute. I assumed it was an hour, and because everything else I do online is about an hour. So I was just trucking along at 30 minutes and just driving forward. It was like, I could see you trying to wind it down. And I'm like, hey, wait a second. In the back of
There's
my
more
mind,
to say. There's more to say.
I was getting clued in. I was like, oh, is this a 30-minute show?
Well, it is for right now, but we're going to keep, when we continue to have these discussions like this, I can see it going to an hour. When I first started doing Real World Talk, that's what it was. No, it was a half an hour, but there were a few that were longer.
Always leave people wanting more. So
right, exactly. And speaking of wanting more, he doesn't know this, but I know that he's watching this right now. So next week, and I need to reach out to confirm this because he doesn't know I'm going to say this. Next week, we're going to have back my dear brother, your dear brother, Reverend Masander Hiroka. There he is.
Yes.
So man, just so type in there that you're going to be here next week. So that we can continue. What's that?
I'm saying tag you're it, Tim.
Yeah, tag you're it. I have a talk called Tag You're It. So yeah, man. So everybody, we've been on Real Talk with the Reverend Dr. David Alexander, who is the senior minister at in Centers for Spirit Living Atlanta, or Atlanta CSL, down there in Georgia. And again, I want to thank New Thought Media Network for hosting this. Produced by Reverend Robert Brzezinski. Thank you, brother. And for that person who gifted the camera to me, thank you very much. Wink, wink. So stay tuned. I also want to let people know that in the link, you can find a link to connect with New Thought Radio Media Network and to leave donations. And if you want to get on the newsletter list, you can do all of that too. Again, I give great thanks to my brother, the Reverend Dr. David Alexander. Thank you for being here, man. And we're going to continue doing what we do. So know that I'm going to reach out to you again and again.
Absolutely. Let's keep doing it. Let's get in some good trouble.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Hey, David, is there anything that you want to leave the folks with before we sign off?
Just what's on my heart today is just prayers for everybody in California, Colorado, Oregon, Washington, Idaho. The whole West Coast is just ablaze in smoke and air quality and danger of animals and evacuation and all of that. So to our first responders and to the people and responding to that and trying to control it, and the people who are trying to get out of the way, and all of that, just lifting up prayers for all of that happening right now.
Cool. My brother, thank you so very much.
Always a pleasure.
And I'll be speaking with you soon, all right?
Sounds good.
You've been listening to Real Talk with Eugene Holden on the New Thought Media Network. If you've enjoyed this programming, please tell a friend and join us next week for more Real Talk with Eugene Holden.